Thank you, colleagues, and welcome to the second meeting of Municipal Council. 1 week ago, we had our first. I know you were all there. I will start off by doing a land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that we are gathered today on the traditional lands of the Anishinaabeg, Haudenosaunee, Lenape-Pewak, and Attawandaron peoples. We honor and respect the history, languages, and cultures of the diverse Indigenous peoples who call this territory home. We acknowledge all of the treaties that are specific to this area: the two-row Wampum Belt Treaty of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, Silver Covenant Chain, the beaver hunting grounds of the Haudenosaunee-Nanfan Treaty of 1701, the Mackay Treaty of 1790, the London Township Treaty of 1796, the Huron Tract Treaty of 1827 with the Anishinaabe, and the Dish with One Spoon Covenant Wampum of the Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee. The three Indigenous nations that are neighbors to London are the Chippewas of the Thames First Nation, Oneida Nation of the Thames, and the Munsee Delaware Nation, who all continue to live as sovereign nations with individual and unique languages, cultures, and customs. With that, and I have bad news and good news. The bad news is, unfortunately, the O Canada singer could not make it today, so we've taken away the podium. The good news is we're still singing O Canada, and we'll do that together. So I don't know if anybody would like to volunteer to lead us in the singing of the national anthem. Seeing there's no volunteers, I will do it. So we'll all rise. And I need you all to sing along because my children will make fun of me if I do it by myself. O Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Thank you for your help with that. Now we understand the value of having a singer. I will start off with disclosures of, actually there's one more acknowledgement I want to make. The City of London is committed to making every effort to providing alternate formats and communication supports for meetings upon request. To make a specific request for this meeting, please contact councilagenda@london.ca or 519-661-2489, extension 2425. I'll look to colleagues for disclosures of pecuniary interest today. Councillor Trosau.
I will declare a pecuniary interest in item 4.21 as I'm an employee of the university.
Thank you. Other disclosures? I have one. So I will disclose on the same matter, item 4.21 on the SPPC agenda, related to a matter of appointments to the University of Western Ontario's Board of Governors. The University of Western Ontario is currently still my employer and will be until the end of the month, so I'll continue to declare a pecuniary interest on this matter until that time. Other disclosures? And I'll just remind colleagues at council, we will stand when we speak with the exception of myself, and so when you're using your microphone, you can do that little reminder by pointing it up. We're going to start next with recognitions, and the first recognition will be made by Councillor Rahman.
Thank you, Your Worship. I rise today, namaste everyone, for Hindu Heritage Month. Celebrated every November is a means of recognizing the important contributions that Hindu Canadians have made to Ontario's social, economic, political, and cultural fabric. Hindu Heritage Month is an opportunity to remember, celebrate, and educate future generations about Hindu Canadians and the important role they played and continue to play in communities across Ontario. The Hindu Legacy Group is an advocacy organization Established in London, Ontario in 2022, the group focuses on raising public awareness about Hindus and Hinduism and advocating for policies and practices that ensure the well-being of people and the planet, thereby fostering the core Hindu traditions of nurturing dignity, mutual respect, and pluralism. Hindu Heritage Month being recognized by the city furthers our goals in creating accurate representation of Hindus and aligning with the City of London's goals to promote equity, diversity, and inclusion. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor. I have Deputy Mayor Lewis next.
Thank you, Your Worship. Colleagues, last week, Londoner Damien Warner, also known as the greatest athlete in the world, added another title to his resume, the Canada Walk of Fame inductee. From humble beginnings as a shy student at Montcalm Secondary School to setting a new Olympic record while winning gold in the men's decathlon last year at the Tokyo Games, Damien has never forgotten his roots. As incredible as his achievements are on the track and continue to be, it's his dedication to this community and those less fortunate that has rightfully endeared him to so many Londoners. Damien has been a longtime champion of countless charities and worthwhile causes, both publicly and privately. And as an example, at last week's Walk of Fame induction ceremony, he allocated $10,000 to the Boys and Girls Club of London and Kids Sport Canada. His perseverance personified and one of London's all-time greatest ambassadors. On behalf of the City of London Council, I'd like to offer Damien and his family our congratulations and our gratitude for his ongoing commitment to this community.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. We have no review of matters, confidential matters to be considered in public. We do have one item for council in closed session. The reason is listed on the public agenda. So at this time, I would look for a motion to move into closed session. I need a mover. Councillor Pelosi, seconded by Councillor Hillier. Any discussion? Okay, we'll move that motion to go into closed session in the system.
Councillors Cuddy and Stevenson. Closing the vote, motion carries 15-0.
Okay, we'll just need a few moments to transition into Okay, we're back in public session. We will now proceed with confirmation and signing of the minutes from previous meetings. We can deal with both the 15th meeting on November 8th and the first meeting on November 15th at the same time. Is someone willing to make a motion? Councillor Lehman, seconded by Councillor Hillier. Any discussion on approval of the minutes? No? Okay, that'll open in the system.
Closing the vote, motion carries 14-0.
Next, we have communication. This section for colleagues who may be new or need a refresher. Traditionally, what we do here is refer these matters to the various items that they're related to so that they can be considered with those items. So I would look for a motion to refer the items. There are a couple on the added agenda. There are 3 actually on the added agenda. Refer those to the various relevant items within the committee agenda. Councillor Hillier, seconded by Councillor Cuddy. Any discussion on that? Okay, that'll open on the screen for voting.
Closing the vote, motion carries 14-0.
Okay, there are no motions to which notice was given. We're on to reports. Item 8.1 is the first report of SPPC. I believe it's a 47-item agenda. I'll ask Deputy Mayor Lewis to present that report on my behalf, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. First, through you, I will advise colleagues and the clerk that item 22, that's 4.21 from the agenda, will need to be pulled separately. That's regarding the appointment to the Western Board of Governors, where 2 members have a conflict, so that needs to be voted on separately. Item 32, that's 4.31 on the SPPC agenda, appointments to the Kettle Creek Conservation Authority. I've been asked to pull that one as well. Item 37, 4.36 on the SPPC agenda. I've been asked to pull that one for a separate vote. And item 40, 4.39 on the agenda, that's the appointment to Eldon House, needs to be pulled separately as we have just approved receiving a communication on that for an additional consideration. And I just want to advise colleagues, I did have a discussion with the clerk just on process before the meeting began. So on the items where we are approving our own appointments to our standing committees and our boards and agencies and commissions, you would have to defeat the committee recommendation to propose an alternate motion. If it comes to the boards and agencies and commissions for members of the public, if there is a particular instance where you wish to have a vote separated for an independent vote, you can do that on a applicant by applicant basis, or it could be a vote against the entire slate.
Okay, to summarize, Deputy Mayor Lewis is willing to put a motion on the floor that includes everything on the agenda with the exception of 22, 32, 37, 40, 41, and 42. Would anybody else like anything other than that dealt with separately? Okay, then we'll have a motion on the floor to approve everything with the exceptions that I just listed. Is there any discussion on those matters with that motion? If not, then we'll just take a moment to get that up on the screen, and then we will open that for voting. Okay, that'll open for voting now.
Closing the vote, motion carries 15-0.
Deputy Mayor Lewis.
Thank you, Worship. I'll put item 22 on the floor. This is the appointment to the University of Western Board of Governors, and the committee recommendation was that the mayor be appointed commencing December 1st, the delayed appointment, and we have conflicts from the mayor and from Councillor Trussow on this item. And as you're not able to chair this, perhaps we could give the chair to Councillor Pelosa for this
Pass
item.
the chair to Councillor Pelosa. I just told the clerk that. Go ahead.
Excellent, we're all on the same page. So this item's now on the floor, looking to see if there's any speakers for it. Seeing none, calling the question.
Councillor Frank. Closing the vote, motion carries 13-0 with 2 recuse.
Turning the chair to Mayor Morgan.
Go back to the Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll put item number 32, that's 4.31 from the SPPC report on the floor. This is the item with regard to the appointment to the Kettle Creek Conservation Authority, and Councillor Trussow asked that we deal with this one separately. I believe he'd like to speak to putting his name forward.
Councillor Trussow.
Yes, I would be willing to add my name for consideration to the appointment to the Kettle Creek Conservation Authority.
Is there someone willing to move that amendment? Councillor Pelosa, seconded by Councillor Hillier. Any discussion on adding Councillor Trussow to the Kettle Creek? Councillor Pelosa?
Thank you to my fellow councillor, as I'm I'm the outgoing councillor from this board. This is also an important board that had reached back out. This board had also reached back out, realizing that the City of London holds a 50% voting share on this board, and without a councillor in place in the interim, as we wait for a provincial ruling that might not come down to mid next year, that it would hold up and inhibit their budget process. So thank you for the councillor for serving on this excellent run board that does wonderful work in the community.
Any other discussion on the amendment to add Councillor Trossau as the appointee? Okay, if not, we're going to open that for vote. Would you like to say anything, Councillor Trossau?
No.
Great speech. I'm sure you'll win the election. We'll open that for voting then in just a moment.
Closing the vote, motion carries 15-0.
I need a mover and seconder for that as amended now. Councillor Cuddy, seconded by Councillor Hopkins. Any discussion on the motion as amended? The amended motion, I should say. Okay, then this is the final decision on this item, so we'll open that for voting.
Closing the vote, motion carries 15-0.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. I will now put item 37 on the floor. This is 4.36 from the Strategic Priorities and Policy Committee agenda. This is with regard to the appointments of the Committee of Adjustment. Councillor Ferreira asked to pull this one separately, and I believe that he wishes to vote against one appointee. The clerk has indicated to me that that can be separated out if that's the councillor's intent. So we will turn to Councillor Ferreira and the clerk for that.
Councillor Ferreira.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through the chair. So as I provided some advance notice to all of you, or I had through the clerk to provide advance notice, thank you to the clerk. I'll be requesting a separate vote on item 37, clause 4.36, on the first report of the Strategic Priorities and Policy Committee. This is related to the appointments of Committee of Adjustment. Further, I will be requesting a separate vote specifically on the appointment of Cheryl Miller, which I intend to vote against. So as you will be aware from communications from members of the public referencing concerns related to the above noted appointment, I share these concerns. As this committee faces the public, it represents the City of London and is facilitated by Neighbours for Neighbours, and we must recognize that this committee, as is the case for all committees, boards, and council, should be conducted with the utmost respect for everybody involved. So in addition, and perhaps more importantly, I feel that this would present an opportunity for new members to be appointed to the committee without a loss of knowledge and its continuity. As 4 of 5 proposed members are current or very recent members, this would present an opportunity to allow new members to gain experience with this very important committee. So thank you.
Okay, so that's a request to pull one name out. Perhaps the best approach is to deal with the other names first. And that way, if the single name fails, there would be a vacancy on that committee, and we could deal with that at the time. So perhaps the deputy mayor can put together a motion that reflects that approach.
So we will start on item 37 then by putting the 4 names that were approved with the exception of Ms. Miller on the floor for a vote.
Okay, any discussion on the 4 names? Yes, Councillor Hopkins.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship, and I'm just trying to think this motion through the process. I didn't support this at the committee, and I'd like to explain why I didn't support it at the committee. I did think that we needed new blood, overall new blood coming onto this committee. That's why I didn't support it. I feel a little, a little uncomfortable when it comes to names sometimes. I understand the concern coming from my colleague. We've heard the concerns from the community, but I do want to clarify the reasons why I am not supporting the appointments to the Committee of Adjustments is because there needs to be an overall turnover and not specific to any individual. So I think I will just continue to support my vote at committee, but I wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other discussion on this? Councillor Trosa.
I too am not going to be supporting this particular applicant. I stated my reasons.
Just so you know, we're on everybody but one applicant, so it's the 4 names that we're discussing now, and then we will deal with the other one.
I'll be supporting the 4 names.
Okay. Okay, so the motion we have is for the 4 names minus Ms. Miller. That's been moved and on the floor for discussion. Any other discussion? Okay, we'll open the vote on those 4 names.
Closing the vote, motion carries 14-1.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. I will put Ms. Miller's name on the floor now. And if you'll allow, I'll speak briefly to that.
Sure, go ahead.
Thank you. So I will be supporting Ms. Miller. I did read the comments from the public, 2 of them that have come in 4 years of service on this committee. And frankly, I saw that the members of the public who were objecting at the Committee of Adjustment were asking for a deferral, not based on the application of the minor variance before the committee, but in fact, because they felt that it would impact their appeal on a council-approved decision to the OLT on another property, which actually would be outside the scope of the Committee of Adjustment to grant a deferral on. So I understand why members of the committee might feel somewhat heated in the moment when they're being asked to do something that's outside of their purview. The Committee of Adjustments mandate is to make decisions on minor variance applications and not to provide a judgment or a precedent on a council ruling on another application. So I will support Ms. Miller, and I would encourage colleagues to do the same.
Other speakers to this motion? Councillor Trosa.
I didn't read the comments as going to another matter. I read the comments as specifically going to the procedures and processes and behaviors and conduct at this particular meeting. Regardless of how this motion is determined today, I think it's something we need to think about. I gave a longer discussion at the committee about the role of quasi-judicial independent hearing officers, and I'm not going to repeat the whole thing. Other than to say, I think there needs to be a mechanism by which members of the public can address these concerns. And I think that the complainants here have attempted to do that, and they've been frustrated. And I think we need to step back from this before we just reproduce the entire slate of 5 again, and think about how we can change this. Based on what's on the floor right now, we have the opportunity to at least get some turnover. And I fully concur with Councillor Hopkins through the chair. I concur with Councillor Hopkins on that. Having said that, I think that we need to think about what the relationship between the council and this committee is and how we deal with complaints from the public. This is a public-facing committee, and this is a very busy public-facing committee, and it's essential that people that come before this committee have confidence in the process. So I am going to be voting no on this applicant, and I would urge others to do so.
Okay, thank you. Other speakers? Councillor Van Meerbergen.
Thank you, Mayor. I will be supporting former Councillor Cheryl Miller. She has given literally years of devoted service to the City of London, not only as a councillor, but also on the Committee of Adjustment and a host of other committees. We all know that when you serve the public, you can't please everyone. Cheryl has years of distinguished decision-making with the Committee of Adjustment, and I see no reason why she should not continue in this role, so I will be supportive.
Other speakers? Councillor Pribble.
Your Worship, even though I don't know the work she has done on this committee, my fellow colleagues, there's one thing that I have an issue with this, and it is I don't like to make decisions about you without you. And we are basing it on public letters, public opinion, and we never gave this individual an opportunity to defend herself and just say the side of her story. And that's my issue with this particular point. The other thing is to add to my fellow councillor Trosso. I don't know if there is a certain procedure policy in place in terms of public addressing any complaints to this adjustment board, but I do think that if we don't, then we should introduce certain specific policy towards that. Thank you.
Thank you. Other speakers? Councillor Ferreira.
Thank you, Your Worship. So just going off of Councillor Pribble, I'm unsure of any type of process as well for any type of, like for Ms. Miller to actually defend herself or actually speak to, so we can bring some type of accountability. And I think that would be good to weigh in both if we were to bring some type of process in that, regardless of how this vote carries forward.
Councillor Hopkins.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship, and thank you for everyone's comments. I will not be supporting this again, going back to the fact that I do believe turnover on this committee is important. A couple of my colleagues here have raised a really good question about process and where the complaints go. And I know I brought up the question around the code of conduct that we are governed by. I'm not sure if this committee is, that is still outstanding in terms of if they are or not. Can I, Your Worship, go through you to staff to see if we can just get a general idea of what the complaint and process is for this committee?
So that would go to either Mr. Card or I think Mr. Mathers, one of those two.
Your Worship, I can take that question. The city does have a code of conduct that is applicable to its local boards. However, the process, assuming for the sake of argument that the Committee of Adjustment is a local board, and I'm not sure of that, but if it were, the process goes under the same, basically the same code of conduct as that applies to municipal councillors. But at the end of that process, there would be a report by an independent investigator, and the Integrity Commissioner would make a determination on the application of the code of conduct to a member of the Committee of Adjustment and the merits of the investigation respecting the conduct of the member subject to the complaint. The findings of the Integrity Commissioner shall be reported to the local board as per the normal procedure respecting such matters. So you would get a report from the Integrity Commissioner going to the local board, which is the Committee of Adjustment. But we have a bylaw which assigns powers to the Committee of Adjustment, and that's where we run into some complications. So there is a process presently. I'm not sure that the process is applicable in this situation. If there is a miscarriage of justice at the Committee of Adjustment, there are provisions that are available to assist those who have been affected. For example, appeals can be submitted presently as of right to the Ontario Land Tribunal. There's also the possibility of judicial review, although that is not something that I'm not providing legal advice here. It's not something I advise. But I think the comments regarding process are correct, that the existing processes would not address this particular situation, and that any such process, as Councillor Ferreira said, should allow a person to make a response to the accusations that are raised. And that is what the code of conduct was set up to do. So it will do that, but the outcome is uncertain. And for that reason, I have some reservations about its application to the situation. And of course, the grievance against the Committee of Adjustment member can be addressed in other ways. For example, if the outcome was affected by this conduct, then there is a right of appeal. There isn't any threshold for that appeal. You can, if you don't like the decision of the Committee of Adjustment, you can appeal to the OLT. Now, Bill 23 does propose some changes to that situation, but it isn't. There isn't a clear answer to that, other than saying that the present code of conduct for local boards can be used. I don't guarantee the outcome.
Thank you for that. And again, I will not be supporting this sort of just overall. I think we need to look at our process, and maybe that's something we as a council can do going through governance, and just to have a better understanding where the public can go with their concerns. So thank you, Mr. Card.
Thank you. Councillor Ferreira, you've already spoken, and at council you can only speak on a matter one time. Is there other speakers? Okay, we have a motion that is moved, that is on the floor before us. If there's no other speakers, I'm going to open that for voting.
The motion reads as follows, that the following be appointed to the Committee of Adjustment for the term ending November 14th, 2026. Cheryl Miller. Closing the vote, motion carries 10-5.
Thank you, Your Worship. The next item I will put on the floor is item 40. This is 4.39 from your SPPC agenda. This is with regard to the appointment to the board for Eldon House. Colleagues will recall that at committee, Councillor Van Meerbergen indicated that there was an additional applicant, but we did not have confirmation, and the direction was to the clerks to reach out and obtain that confirmation.
Yes, and there's information on the agenda from that individual, and if someone wants to add that individual, it would be an amendment to what it was proposed at SPPC. Councillor Van Meerbergen. Sorry, just so I'm clear, Councillor Lewis is putting the SPPC recommendation on. That's what we would be amending. You can speak now.
So I would move the amendment.
You can move an amendment.
So
yes, if you like.
I will move the amendment that Bruce Duncan be added to the board of Eldon House.
Councillor Hillier is willing to second that. So we will have discussion on the amendment now. Is there any discussion on that amendment to add that name to the Eldon House slate? Okay, seeing none, then we will open a motion in the system on the amendment to add the name.
Closing the vote, motion carries 15-0.
On the amended motion for a mover and a seconder as amended. Moved by Councillor Lehman, seconded by Councillor Hillier. So this is now the full Eldon House Board with the additional name for consideration. Any discussion on that? No? Okay, we will open that for voting.
Closing the vote, motion carries 15-0.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you, I will put item 41 on the floor now. This is with regard to the public appointment to the London Police Services Board, and this was pulled by Councillor Van Meerbergen.
And you're willing to put the committee recommendation on the floor?
Yes, I will put the committee recommendation on the floor.
Councillor Van Meerbergen, did you want to speak to it or just vote?
No, just wanted an opportunity to vote separately. Thank you.
Then any discussion on this? Okay, we'll open this for voting. And it's the committee's recommendation that is on the floor.
Closing the vote, motion carries 11-4.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm going to put item 42 on the floor now. This is the appointment to the London Public Library Board. I do want to take an opportunity right now to share with colleagues because there's been some discussion about how this process rolled out and about how we can improve it. And I think that the discussion around how we can improve the process moving forward is very, very important for us to have. I do want to, particularly for new colleagues, provide a little bit of background on our preferential voting system. And we did get to the system that we are using through several iterations at the governance working group with a lot of work, and thank you to the clerks for all that work, of trying different preferential voting systems to get to one that would assist us in selection processes like this. So while I hear colleagues' very legitimate desire to see some improvements, I want to open the door now to anyone to certainly come and have a conversation with me about the background on governance working group. Happy to have that discussion with you and how we can make some changes perhaps through governance working group moving forward. That will require some direction through a future SPPC to the governance working group. But when we're considering this, the application process certainly could collect some more demographic data and provide us more insight into the applicants who are putting their names forward for these boards and commissions. That may include a voluntary box on gender identity identification. We may wish to collect some other demographic data as well. We may want to see a diversity of ages. We may want to see whether or not a person identifies with a visible minority group as Indigenous in other ways that may impact our voting. So I think that's an important discussion to have. But I do want to remind colleagues that at council, we wouldn't be amending or changing the voting process today. That's a conversation that we have to have moving forward. So I just wanted to extend to everybody the invitation. If you'd like some background, the clerks have lots. Certainly the mayor and myself sat on that governance working group for the past 4 years, and a lot of time was spent on this. So we're always open to ways to improve it. It's just that improving the process moving forward may seem a little slow and cumbersome, but I think that that's the best way to move forward is to make some improvements through the process moving forward. So I will put the entire slate as recommended by SPPC on the floor, and we'll see if colleagues have any further comments or desires to do anything with that.
Okay, so the SPPC recommendation is on the floor. Councillor Hillier, you have a question.
Thank you, colleagues. At this meeting, I'll be honest, I got a little upset, and I have to thank the mayor and the deputy mayor for talking to me the next day. As you know, I was quite offended, honestly. We have a process in place for bringing people to office, and not a week beforehand, that same process was used to elect us. And we tossed a candidate out because he didn't meet some demographics. And then we actually manipulated the numbers to change the result. Now, for me, that offended
Counselor?
me greatly. Sorry.
I'm going to caution you in saying we manipulated numbers.
Oh, I'm sorry,
We
I'm sorry.
We did
Sorry.
not do
Change
that.
the variables slightly.
We ran a process twice.
Yes.
A very fair and transparent process. So
I'm very
just-
sorry.
I would
I
use
apologize
different
for that.
language, please. Thank you.
Thank you. But we do have a process, and like Council Lewis did explain, sorry, Deputy Mayor Lewis did explain, we have the governance working group to work on these processes. And I don't think we should be doing it on the fly. Personally, I'm hoping we will turn down this slate of candidates and go with the previously democratically elected slate. So I'd like, if this is defeated, I would like to move a motion for the original slate of candidates. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And that is the correct process. If you would like to do that, you would need to vote against the committee's recommendation if you wanted to put an alternate slate on the floor. Other discussion on the committee's recommendation? Councillor Cuddy.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I'd like to thank my colleague for the very well-said comment that we have a democratic process in place and that we need to respect it. And that I felt last week, and I'm sorry I didn't speak up at the time, but I think we need to
Out of it. And sure enough, we got a slate from that first round that we had, and it made sense. I mean, it was a democratically chosen, I mean, sure, any one of us can pick it apart and say, oh, it should be this, should be that. But that's not democracy. That's not how democracy works. The fact of the matter is we need to stay clear of engaging in identity politics. Let's choose people who are the best. And it doesn't matter what their race is, their sexual orientation, that doesn't matter. But who is the best? Let's stay away from quotas and all the rest of it. Because in the end, that's really not fair. And it's not fair to the people of London because they're expecting us to choose the best on all these boards and commissions.
Councillor Trosau.
I would be hesitant to engage in a statement that suggests that the slate that's going forward is not the best. There were a lot of really qualified people on this who submitted applications who were very well qualified. I spoke to some of the ones who were chosen by the striking committee who were not on either of these lists, and I'm not going to do that again today. But I want to get clear from the clerk. My understanding is that our first vote on a committee was not a decided matter of council, and it doesn't become a binding decided matter of council until the council ratifies it. And if the council ratifies it, and then there's sort of second question. Through the chair, of course.
To the clerk.
Through your worship, the councillor is quite correct. It's a committee recommendation, and until the slate is voted on by council, it's not a decided matter of council.
I have a speaker's list, so I know everybody's waving, but you're on it. I have Councillor Frank next.
Yes, I just want to address, again, following up on Councillor Trosau's comments. My understanding is we put forward a slate, it failed. We put forward another slate, it passed. And considering just moments ago, we had some people put up the London Police Services Board, which is technically a slate of one, and tried to see if it was able to be turned over and have a new vote. That is literally the exact same process. So I don't understand why there are councillors who are offended by this process when somebody just tried to do it 2 seconds ago. So I would just like to say I did, it didn't go ideally because we are trying to move forward with an equity lens. And I have asked for a motion in the future SPPC meeting to use a different process because I agree it was not the most ideal. But I do not think that there's been any procedural violations, and to suggest otherwise, I think is unfair, considering somebody literally just tried to do it 2 seconds ago. So, thank you.
Councillor Pribble.
Just to address my colleague, Councillor Franke, I do see a difference in terms of that the police board was passed right away last week, while the library board, we did vote for certain people to be members of this board, and then the discussion started and we reversed our decision. As some of you already know, and I addressed it as well, my big issue is this, again, comes to our policy. And if we honestly believe in the bottom of our hearts that we want to move our community forward, we have some great ideas, and we want to introduce certain guidelines before the vote, I'm totally for it, if it's really for the good cause. But we haven't done that last week. We haven't done that, and we did vote. And again, my issue with this is the democratic process, that we did vote for certain people, and then afterwards, we started to say, okay, this might not be to the vision for London, but we change our mind. We change our minds, and that's an issue with me. I do think if we do it in advance, I think that it's a thing to consider, absolutely, against through the government's committee. But based on what we did, that I don't think that was the fair decision to the ones we have selected. Put yourself into the shoes of those people. If you saw your name up, and then we decided that's not to our picture, and let's reverse it. Thank you.
I have myself next on the speaker's list, then I'll add you, Councillor Hopkins. I'm going to turn the chair over to Councillor Pelosa.
Thank you. Recognizing Mayor Morgan.
Colleagues, I wanted to just rise and add some context to this debate, having been on the governance working group for, I think, 8 years, and gone through multiple iterations of a desire of municipal council to try to streamline the process to find common preferences to choose candidates for committees. And there were multiple iterations of that process that I would say were time-consuming, not smooth, perhaps did not choose a preference. And if you recalled through the voting structure, and I tried to emphasize again and again, it is a selection tool. It is a process for us to quickly and efficiently find some common preferences on candidates, and then use that information to craft forward a slate. Now, often, the results of the preference tool become the slate, but that's not necessary. That's not the process. And if you want to talk about the democratic process, it is each and every one of us who are elected here today who makes a final and binding decision on who is going to be appointed to our boards and commissions. And we have designed, as a council, a process that aids us in that endeavor. And we also have the ability as a council to override that process, which we did at committee. And we said, notwithstanding the process, we'd like to take another go at this with some slightly different parameters of choosing those who received a certain threshold to move on. And that's also democratically legitimate. Council has that authority to go through that process to try to find a slate that has the widest possible support of council. And there are people who we selected who are not my first choice or my second choice. There are many people, I think, who will say there's members who are not on this library board that I'd like to see there. But I hope that after we decide tonight, regardless of which way we go, we give whoever is successful our full support to govern a very important organization in our city. But everything that is occurring up to this point and everything that is occurring today is fully democratically legitimate. It is the process, and it is our desire to find a common consensus for as many members of council as possible to put forward a slate for our boards and commissions today, as was the vote with the Police Services Board. And I would endeavor all of you to give your full support now that we've made a decision to Susan Toth, the successful candidate. But these debates and these discussions are exactly what our job is to share those differences of opinion, share those differences of perspectives, come to a decision, and then support that decision as a council. So I fully support the debate that is going on right now, but I would caution colleagues in saying that an election was won or lost. That is a selection tool that informs us to make a decision on the best possible, widely supported slate of candidates for these important boards and commissions. Thank you.
Thank you. Returning the chair to you with Councillor Hopkins next on the list.
Councillor Hopkins.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship, and I very much appreciate the words that you used as well. At committee, we do the work, we make changes, we are able to debate. We're not perfect. The library board had many, many good applicants. It was difficult. I found it very challenging. The committee is where we do our work. We can make adjustments, we can make changes, we can listen to one another. There is time before it comes to council to maybe discuss. I know there's a number of things. I'm glad I'm going to be on the governance working group is all I can say, because this process has showed that some of the flaws that we've had in other committees as well. But it is the process. We are here at council. We do make the final decision. We are elected by residents. That is something you can hear in each and every one of our comments. We take it very seriously. But committee is the work that we do. So I would encourage you to support this. And sure, we can look at the process through governance. I think it's going to be a very busy working group. So thank you.
Councillor Lehman.
Thank you. There are two things here that I see. One is the process that we use. And I think, as the mayor said, in the past 4 years, we had worked with this process. And I think the process worked exactly as it was intended. It provided us a tool to come up with, out of, I think, 30 names or so, to select down to 7. Very complex way to do it. Provide us a tool to present to the committee a slate of candidates. That slate, when presented, showed a picture that some on council didn't feel comfortable with, me included, quite frankly, when I saw how the slate came out. It wasn't, all my choices weren't on that slate, but however, as it shook out, I can see the challenges there, and I understand the concerns and why we voted on it. The other thing that we do is we have a committee, SPPC, where all of us serve on. So people wonder, well, why do we have a vote there? And then we go to council where we have a vote again, what we already decided by everybody. And the purpose is this. It gives us a chance to review our decisions that we made in the context of getting away from it, to do further research, further thought, further information that might come to light that allow us to have a chance to change our minds, quite frankly. And that's what I did. I tried to put the best folks forward that, in my opinion, would serve us well. And then I understand the importance of looking through with an EDI lens, the makeup of a whole. And so that's why I supported the motion made by Deputy Mayor Lewis, which made some changes. I also then supported further changes. But on reflection, I felt uncomfortable with it. I felt uncomfortable when I was driving home because of the folks that were then left off the list that also represented minorities that could be seen by some through that same lens. So that's the challenge you have when we use EDI as a lens. How far down do you go to make sure everything is represented? So on that basis, I will be voting against this because of that second thoughts and concerns and the uncomfortableness I feel with that decision.
Any further speakers? Okay, what we have before us is the slate that was recommended by SPPC that Deputy Mayor Lewis has put on the floor. We will vote on that. If it's successful, that will be the library board. If it's not, we can entertain other options. So we'll open this for voting.
Councillor Stevenson. Closing the vote, motion carries 9-6.
Okay, I'm going to go back to Deputy Mayor Lewis.
Thank you, Your Worship. That actually completes the first report of the Strategic Priorities and Policy Committee.
Well, good news, we're on added reports now, which means you get to do another SPPC meeting. And if colleagues remember this, it was from just a couple of hours ago. The report is, this is how good our clerk staff is. The added report is under added reports now, under section 9 in your eScribe, and has the recommendations there for you.
Thank you, Your Worship. And actually, before I present the second report of SPPC, thanks to our sharp, eagle-eyed clerks, I do have to first report out on the first report of the Strategic Priorities and Policy Committee on the matter for which we went in camera. And I am reporting out that progress was made on the item for which we went in camera, which was with regard to client solicitor privilege.
Thank you for that. I'll let you proceed with the SPPC meetings report from earlier today.
Thank you. So I will now put the second report of SPPC on the floor. This is a much shorter report with only 2 items on the agenda: disclosures of pecuniary interest and Bill 23, More Homes Build Faster Act information report, which we received and passed a motion on.
Yes, and this is the ratification of the motions that we amended and passed earlier today. So you put the whole report on the floor. Is there any discussion on that, colleagues? Okay, then we'll open this for voting.
Closing the vote, motion carries 15-0.
Deputy Mayor?
And that, Your Worship, concludes the second report of SPPC.
Okay, we have no deferred matters. We have no inquiries that I'm aware of. No? Seeing none. We have no emergent motions that have been submitted. So we're on to bylaws. We have one bylaw to approve today, bylaw number 3, which is the confirming bylaw for the proceedings at this particular council meeting today. I'll look for a mover for first reading. Deputy Mayor Lewis, seconded by Councillor Van Meerbergen. There is no debate on first reading, so we will open first reading for voting.
Closing the vote, motion carries 15-0.
I need a mover and a seconder for second reading of this Loza, and seconded by Councillor Ferreira. Second reading does have the ability to make comments. Is there any comments or discussion on the confirmation bylaw? Okay, seeing none, we'll open second reading for voting.
Councillor Frank? Closing the vote, motion carries 15-0.
Third and final reading of Bill number 3, the confirming bylaw. I have Councillor Trostow and Councillor McAllister moving and seconding. There's no debate on third reading, so we'll open that for voting.
Carries 15-0.
Before I entertain a motion to adjourn, thank you again to all of our staff who helped pull together a significant and important volume of information related to our earlier discussion at that special meeting of on Bill 23. I know that a number of people had to drop what they had and shift what they were doing to ensure that we had the information before us to establish a council position that we can now move forward with submitting to the government by the deadline. So thank you to our staff for that important work, and thank you again for everybody who helped make today's council meeting possible as well. With that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Van Meerbergen, seconded by Councillor Hillier. This is a hand vote. All those in favor of adjournment?
That motion carries.
We're adjourned.